Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are checking out another incredibly cool, brand new Artic Figures release, as we've got another Spinosaurus here to take a look at. And not only that, this is the juvenile Spinosaurus. So we recently have reviewed the adult version. We are now taking a look at the other one here included in the Indiegogo campaign, and actually not just the other one, there are quite a few, even more so than this, but this is the juvenile version in, again, the Artic Figures Indiegogo campaign that is currently going on that you can pick up. And of course, we have absolutely tons of articulation on our Spinosaurus, as you usually have in the Artic Figures line. But on top of this, he's done such a great job of sculpting this out in a way that it looks 100% like the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, but obviously switched it up a little bit to kind of resemble more of a juvenile. We've lowered the size of the sail a little bit, as it obviously is a little bit younger than the adult that we had obviously seen, and we'll see the two together in a comparison a little bit later so you can get a good idea of how they size up next to each other. But just me holding it here, I'd like to think you can really get a good idea of how much smaller this one is. But again, it is absolutely gorgeous. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look at this right now. So obviously, something that you probably were already able to tell, this is unpainted. He is selling painted and unpainted versions of his Spinosaurus in the Indiegogo campaign. I have an unpainted version here because I'm going to paint it up myself. I love painting dinosaurs, so why not? And as you can see, again, as we move up here toward the head sculpt, look at how beautiful that head sculpt is. Look at how nicely done the detail is overall. Like, that is an absolutely incredible Jurassic Park 3 style Spinosaurus head sculpt. I'm not entirely sure, but it also looks like he's kind of increased the size of the eyes compared to the adult to, again, give it more of a juvenile type look. And Artic Figures is super good at doing that. Really little differences to kind of differentiate the dinosaurs in a really realistic way. And probably has done stuff to the figure that I won't even pick up on. He's so good at it. But you can see the nostrils sculpted out really nicely. Again, all the scale detail, if we get nice and close here, looks really good on the head sculpt of the Spinosaurus. The nice wrinkling increasing there in the eye area as well looks great. We have an articulated jaw, just like we had for the adult. You can see the skin flap there kind of on the inside of the mouth. The teeth all look really, really good as far as the sculpt goes. Each tooth seems to be sculpted individually and in a very realistic way. You can see we also have an articulated tongue. It's a little hard for me to get my finger in there. There we go. We've got it now. We've got an articulated tongue for the Spinosaurus as well, so we can now see that we've got a nice roaring sort of a look with the tongue sitting right there in the center of the mouth. And it's awesome to have so much articulation on one of these, but even cooler to now have an articulated tongue on the Spinosaurus, something that we didn't have on the Tyrannosaurs. Although, I mean, I don't know that we really would have had much posability options with the T-Rex and the tongue, because the tongue's not quite as long as we have here for the Spinosaurus, but it's still, again, super cool to have such nice updated articulation, and both of the tongue and jaw, they work super nicely on this Spinosaurus. As you start to move up here to the top of the head, you can again see the same style of scale detail that we saw on the adult, now here on the juvenile. Moving back along the neck, you can see the kind of like armored-like appearance, and as we move down, we of course have lots of articulation moving down. You've got a spot right here behind the head, you've got a spot here, 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 and here. So numerous spots moving down the course of the neck of the Spinosaurus, and you can see again that gives you such really nice free range, basically, as far as movement goes for the Spinosaurus to articulate that neck and put it exactly where you want it, which is awesome. You can also see the throat sculpted out here on the underside moving down. And then leading back here into the body, you can kind of make out the shoulder blade a little bit right there, but you can also see again how nice and crisp the actual skin texture is on the Spinosaurus. It is incredibly well done, just super, super highly detailed. As you move down the course of the arm here, you can kind of make out the muscle definition there in the arm as you move down, and you of course have numerous articulated joints moving down through this area as well. You've of course got like the shoulder area, and then you can see you've got two different joints here in the elbow to allow some nice posability in the elbow, and then you've also got the wrist articulation here, which is nice. You don't have articulated fingers on this one because the figure's just too small compared to the adult. The adult does have articulated fingers and toes, But as you move down into those hands, you can see the hands look really nice as far as the sculpt, if my camera would stay focused on it. But the hands look great as far as the sculpt, and of course the nails look great. And the nails just genuinely have that sharp-looking appearance to them, which adds a nice element of realism to the figure that you don't always get when it comes to articulated Jurassic Park-style figures. As you move up here into the stomach, again, more fantastic skin texture. You can also see that we have this joint right here, and that's because you can use that to sort of articulate your Spinosaurus up and down, and again, create some more poses for the Spinosaurus. And I like that because it doesn't cut the sail in half to sort of like articulate it in an awkward sort of a way. It definitely keeps the sail intact, which is a very nice touch, and it's the first time I've ever seen that kind of articulation, or at least it was with the adult, so quite innovative on the part of Artic Figures as well. Again, the actual detailing up there in the sail looks great. You continue to have those larger scales running here along the underside of the sail. Moving back here, you can kind of pick up on the hip bone. Definitely you can see some muscle definition there in the thigh. As you move down, you've got the knee, the calf muscle, and again, when we get nice and close, you can really appreciate how, well, if my camera again would focus on it, how good the actual skin texture and skin detail is. Moving down into the foot, you've got some nice scoots running down the toes, running down the front of the foot. Again, really nicely sculpted out nails, and of course a dew claw is present. And moving down through the course of the leg, you of course have tons of articulation here as well. You can see we've got hip articulation, very nice. You've got knee articulation that looks just like we had with the elbow, where you have two different joints, one above and below the knee, adding in some really nice posability for the knee. And then you've got two more joints of articulation down here in the ankle area. Again, the adult has articulated toes, but the juvenile, just because it's so much smaller, does not. And then as you move up here into the tail, again, you start to see articulated joints galore moving out through the length of the tail, because the tail is fully posable, just giving you tons of different options as far as posing that tail. But the skin texture continues to look really nice as you move out into the tail. You also have that slightly armored appearance here to the top of the tail running along the spinal column of the dinosaur. And again, I'm not even going to begin to try to count all of the different joints moving out into the tail, but you can see that again, it is as posable as it gets. These figures are stop motion dream come true for sure, but also just anybody that loves to create dioramas, loves to create poses for your figures. Like, you're not going to find more posable figures, I don't think, than what you get from Artic Figures. So you can see the tail as well is just phenomenal. And of course, the opposing side is going to look pretty much the same. There wouldn't be any type of a drastic difference on this side compared to what we had just seen on the initial side. You can see all the detailing looks the same, looks incredibly well done over here, just like it did on the initial side. Just an absolutely gorgeous interpretation of a juvenile Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. Something I've never seen in my entire life would be a juvenile JP3 Spinosaurus. I mean, Papo sort of created one, but theirs, although obviously is similarly based on the adult Spinosaurus from Papo, is in a way a Jurassic Park 3 juvenile, but this one is definitively based on what a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus juvenile would look like. You can also see we have the Artic Figures logo there on the underside of the foot. So super well done sculpt. I'm really excited to get this one painted up. I'm going to have to think outside the box here with this one. Since it's a juvenile, I do want to differentiate it from the adult. I don't want it to look the same. Let's go ahead, get it painted up, and then we'll see how it turns out. So I finished the Spinosaurus, and this is what I came up with as far as a juvenile version paint scheme. I wanted to make it different from the adult, but not too far off. I kind of wanted to give it the appearance of a coloration that could be kind of transitioning into what the adult looks like. So I felt like this was a coloration that was similar enough to the adult, but different at the same time, that it could have, you know, its own individual unique look. But obviously you can see that it's sort of in the process of changing into the coloration that we see on the actual adult. We've got the blues kind of showing up there in the sail, similar tones of color with some slight orangish hints and stuff, and of course we have the reddish tone, and this would diminish as it gets older, and this would be overtaken by the gray. I also tried to add that kind of white stripe that you see moving down the course of the body of the Spinosaurus, but in a really, really subtle way, so it sort of appears as though it's just beginning to show up. Maybe that's something that comes with maturity. And you can also see again the head sculpt obviously has the reddish tone, but not quite as much of the red as you see on the adult version. And I also made the red on the majority of this one, a bit of a different tone of color compared to the adult. It's a slightly brighter tone of red compared to what we see on the adult. And you can also see as we move out here into the tail that the red doesn't run quite as far out onto the tail. It transitions to a grayish tone, and of course that as well would, potentially change as the dinosaur gets older. That's just my take on it, kind of what I came up with as far as what a coloration that could potentially look like a naturalistic coloration for a juvenile version of a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. But again, once you add some paint to it, again, you can see how beautiful it is. It is absolutely gorgeous as far as the sculpt. It's actually honestly hard for me to decipher if I like this one or the adult best, because this one is just that good. I would normally never expect a juvenile version like this to rival the adult as far as the overall appeal factor goes, but this Artic Figures Juvenile Spinosaurus really does do that. Like, it's that good of a sculpt, and the articulation, again, is just super, super smooth on this. Incredibly, incredibly smooth. So that as well is definitely a huge plus for the figure, but I was pretty happy with the way this one turned out. I don't know if I'm perfectly happy, because again, when I have to kind of get creative and come up with paint schemes on my own, I'm never confident in them. So this is one of those instances where you'll have to let me know in the comments section what you guys think of this as far as the color scheme goes, and if you think it could potentially work as, a juvenile Spinosaurus paint scheme. But again, I really wanted to just show you guys how fantastic the model looks once you add some paint to it, how beautiful it is overall, and I can't wait to actually see it with the adult, because I haven't actually displayed the two together quite yet, because I always want to wait for the review to do things like that. But hopefully my paint job has made the Spinosaurus look at least pretty good, because honestly the sculpt is phenomenal. Now, as far as a size goes on our juvenile version of the Spinosaurus, lengthwise you were looking at about 7.5 inches or around 19 centimeters. And height-wise, the current position, I would say the head is probably the tallest, but of course, it depends on the way you position it. You're looking at about 2 3/4 inches or around 7 centimeters for a height in this positioning again for our juvenile Spinosaurus. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Artic Figures Juvenile Spinosaurus. And you honestly could get the juvenile and potentially just paint that up as an adult. There is obviously some slight differences between the juvenile and the adult, but it doesn't look too far off as far as the overall appearance compared to the adult. And you can definitely see that the figure overall is not very large, but it's a juvenile. You wouldn't really expect it to be too big, so I would say it's honestly a perfect size range for a juvenile Spinosaurus. And then as far as another comparison goes, we have a Takara Tomy Jurassic World Dominion Tyrannosaurus Rex next to the Spinosaurus, and you can definitely see they're not too far off as far as the size compared to each other here. You can definitely see the Spino is a little bit bigger, but I think with the Takara Tomy figure stepping in, that really should help to give you a pretty healthy respect for the amount of insane detail contained within a fairly small figure overall. And then when it comes to smaller Artic Figures, articulated juvenile dinosaur figures, you've got the juvenile Tyrannosaurus, which is a little younger. I wouldn't really say it's a juvenile. It's definitely very young, so obviously a bit younger than our Spinosaurus, but you can see the baby Rex here next to the juvenile Spinosaurus. If you happen to have, snagged yourself the juvenile Rex from the previous Indiegogo campaign, then this is a comparison that definitely might interest you. And then for another comparison as far as juvenile Spinosaurus goes, if you happen to have the Papo version, which I don't know if I'd really consider that a juvenile or more of just a baby, but you can get a good look here at what the size difference is between the Papo version and the Artic Figures version. Obviously, the Artic Figures version is way more accurate than the Papo version when recreating a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, even though the Papo version's loosely based on it, not exactly, perfectly based on it, but you can definitely see a pretty significant difference between the two as far as the accuracy in creating a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, but also a slight difference in size. We've also got a comparison here with the Artic Figures adult male Tyrannosaurus Rex next to the Spinosaurus, and you can obviously see there is a pretty drastic size difference between these two, but the one I'm most excited to see as far as a comparison goes is obviously Daddy and Baby here going nose to nose as we have the adult version of the Artic Figures Spinosaurus next to the juvenile, and they look incredibly cool next to each other. Honestly, the dioramas when it comes to these new Artic Figures releases are off the charts. Like, there's so much you could do with them. But again, hopefully looking at the two next to each other, you can definitely see again a pretty significant difference as far as the coloration goes, but also, you know, possibly the juvenile Spinosaurus kind of morphing into the coloration of what we see on the adult. So I tried my best to make it a coloration that looks like it could be coloration of the Spinosaurus in a transitional phase, but definitely looking awesome next to each other. Again, the display options for this are pretty much endless. So this brand new Artic Figures juvenile Spinosaurus is fantastic. Honestly, just as beautiful, maybe even more beautiful, it depends on your preference, as the adult version, but they are both honestly incredible figures. I don't know that I have any better versions of Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus in my collection, especially when it comes to articulated versions than I have now with these Artic Figures releases. And the juvenile is, again, absolutely gorgeous as far as the sculpt, extremely accurate as far as the fine detail goes, and just the general overall appearance as to what a Spinosaurus like this would look like in this age range. Like, he has done a very good job as far as creating the Spinosaurus in a way where you have very subtle differences between the adult and the juvenile, but also still, you know, pretty much creating it in a way that it looks exactly as it probably would in real life or in the films. If, again, this dinosaur were a living, breathing animal and actually Spinosaurus looked like this, I could 100% see this being what a juvenile version looked like. So Artic Figures did a phenomenal job as far as, again, sculpting this figure out in a way where it looks absolutely like it is part of the family of the adult version of the Spinosaurus. Again, my paint here was basically my idea that I came up with as far as differentiating an adult from a juvenile. I definitely did not want to just recreate the adult paint scheme in the juvenile form. It wouldn't really make sense because it's not going to look exactly the same. The dinosaur kind of is in the process, in the transitional phase of growing up, and would eventually start to transition into the coloration of the adult, if it indeed is a male, because the female actually, as far as what Artic Figures has told me, and his idea for it, is a very different coloration than what we see on the male version, which is really cool. But again, I made this in the way of sort of looking like a younger adult male version of the Spinosaurus. So hopefully it turned out pretty nice. Hopefully you guys like the coloration I came up with. If you buy the unpainted version, you can basically create it in any way you like, any coloration you like, even replicating the adult version if that's what you choose to do. But again, you can purchase this, I believe, from Artic Figures in painted and unpainted versions. That's up to you which way you would like to go. But of course, both of mine were unpainted, and I painted them up for myself. Again, the sculpt is phenomenal. The paint was done by me, so you guys have to let me know what you think of it. But the articulation is just as incredible as every other Artic Figures release, and insanely smooth. It all works beautifully on the figure. Very nice articulation overall, and there is just a ridiculous amount of it. Like, there is just articulation everywhere on this figure, which is extremely cool. So yet again, just like with the adult, this is a massive recommendation from me, and definitely something that is worth picking up and worth adding to your collection, and now beginning to create your Spinosaurus family. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to the Indiegogo campaign of Artic Figures, where you can head on over there right now and grab yourself this juvenile Spinosaurus, along with all the others that are up in that Indiegogo campaign available to purchase. So make sure you do that, make sure you grab your Spino family, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.